Welcome back to Scratching the Surface. My name is Justin, aka Money.
And my name is Cody, aka Junes.
We are joined alongside by a regular special guest, Collin Vetter. Welcome, dude. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be back. Hopefully, I don't fumble this episode like I did on Saturday when we went to the bar and played a little bit pool and missed that 8 shot. And so if anybody watches, go on the TikTok and you'll see what happened. Not very happy about that, but Hopefully this is a little bit better.
Yeah. And later in this episode, we'll actually have my brother Tyler come in to give his just quick overall opinion, his rating, his thoughts at the end, kind of the most important part of the pod. So I think because we did, like you said, we all four saw it in theaters together, which is freaking awesome. Because I think I mentioned when we were together the last time we were all four at a movie was Halloween Ends, I think a couple years ago. So, and like you said, we're going to be dissecting Immaculate. So we'll briefly just kind of give our thoughts. We'll dive into it. We'll have a table talk session as well. And yeah, give our ratings at the end. Like I said, we'll have Tyler come in, our other special guests. So overall, I think it overperformed for me at the end of the day. Just for being this type of movie, I was, in the theater obviously helped, but like I was really, really invested. This film did a great job hooking me in. I'm curious to hear what you guys think, just general thoughts. No spoilers right now, kinda, but yeah, and just kind of see what you think, Junes.
My initial thoughts, Money.
Yeah.
After watching this movie, I'm convinced that Sydney Sweeney should return to another horror film. I think she seamlessly tackles the challenge of fitting to a certain character, a certain mold that is required for these darker, more grim films that are common in horror. I want to see her again. I think, especially in the final scenes, she does an exceptional job. We'll talk about it a little bit at the later part of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
So convincing. I think we're provided a film that disturbingly portrays a modern story of the Virgin Mary, making us envision how Mary would have felt 2,000 years ago, going through this and hearing that she has been chosen to conceive and give birth to the Son of God. That's a lot of freaking weight to have on your shoulders as a normal person. And I think we see Cecilia, Sydney Sweeney's character in this film, deeply struggling with the idea of this being possible. It's really a revelation type film for horror, for Catholic subgenres, and they do it well ultimately. However, I don't think you're going to be blown away. That's just my opinion. It's not going to be blowing your socks off.
Yeah.
It's not super tense. The scares aren't really there all the while. So just straight up solid film. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I think it's just like you're in for it for the long haul. You know what I mean? And it pays off, I think. But yeah, I like how you said that. Collin, what did you think?
It was amazing being able to sit by you guys. I think a couple times, just looking over at all you guys, diving into your guys' popcorn. And it feels so good. All the worries in life are essentially wiped away in those 2 hours of being in the theater and watching a pretty good movie. And I think I'm going to echo a little bit on kind of what Cody said about the acting by Sydney Sweeney. I think going into this movie, there was a little bit of me where it's like, okay, is this movie going to be a little overrated because of her? Because of everybody just loving her because of her attractiveness, right? And I think the biggest question is like, is she going to be a little too attractive to be a nun? Like, is it going to almost be kind of, I don't know, just kind of fake, kind of just not very good. But I was all on board with her character. And I think the very end, I don't want to spoil this, but the very end, just the extreme emotion that she had, because they had the camera on her for like, a solid 3 to 4 minutes. And it was just up close on her. And there was no like cut. All right. It was straight on. And just that extreme emotion, I mean, just shows how good of an actress, I should say, she is. But yeah, I think this movie, it's not a perfect horror film by any stretch of the imagination. But I think it's a movie that a lot of people can get on board with. But I do think that, like, if you think about in a particular year, I'm just gonna say, obviously, there's more than 10 movies that come out, 10 horror movies that come out in a particular year. But let's just say 10 come out. I would say probably 70% or 7 out of the 10 movies that come out in a particular year for horror genres, not very good, right? Like movies that are just duds, they stink. And then I would say probably like 20% or like 2 out of the 10 are like decent movies, like good movies, like definitely something I enjoyed. And then really, I think 10% or 1 out of 10 is like very, like they hit it. And like if you look back at like last year for 2023, that one movie was like Saw X. I love horror, right? But like, let's face it, most of the movies that come out in the horror genre are just kind of iffy. This movie fits in that like 20% where it's not the best, but it is pretty damn good.
Yeah, great freaking analogy, because I think this right now is either in that 10 or 20% club. Before we continue, and we briefly, I want to say briefly, we were all in theaters, we didn't take notes. We'll discuss general topics, scenes, favorite things we liked. Just kind of rolling through the film. And really, before we continue, just make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as TikTok and YouTube, where you can see our reactions, our faces, with the full length episodes there as well. So, guys, Immaculate, the name itself. What were your initial thoughts on that? Like having someone have literally an immaculate conception as a horror film nowadays, that's just, I feel like that's so different. June's, like, what did you think of just the name itself, having something like this in a modern day horror film?
Yeah, the title Immaculate, when you're talking about religion, there's a lot of controversy within it. A lot of people that disagree with having these sorts of themes in film. You saw that especially in The Exorcist. That was a cutting edge film for that type of message in a horror movie, and people took it out of context, I think, and they were very upset about the type of story that was being displayed to wide audiences. You see the exact same thing here in Immaculate. We are touching on religion, the Immaculate Conception. We know of the story of Mary, of Jesus, and we are, I would say, fine-tuning this to fit the narrative of a horror film, which I think is fucking awesome. But you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be rubbed the wrong way, quite frankly. But for us as horror films, it doesn't affect us whatsoever. But the title of itself, Immaculate, you have Sydney Sweeney, beautiful woman. You have an awesome setting in Rome, Italy. Everything is on point for the type of film we're going for. I think the marketing was pretty decent too. I mean, I didn't see a whole lot of ads left and right, but when they did it, it caught my eye. Sydney Sweeney on the front picture. I think all of that is immaculate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you really need much marketing when you have Sydney Sweeney have like 20 million followers on Instagram. All she has to do is post a few times, and there you go, free advertising there.
That's a good point. Yeah, but I loved this plot. You have this girl. She gets sanctioned into like this nun house, like you said, in Rome, Italy, and she really just embarks on a journey of faith to join and become a member of the community. And all of a sudden she's pregnant, and it's a miracle. She's a miracle child, and I think they depict her as just such a young woman. Like, I don't know exactly how old she is in the film.
I do think that they did a good job of like when we first found out that she was pregnant, really believing that, okay, maybe this is like a miracle or, something. And obviously as the movie goes on, we start realizing how kind of sinister the priest is and everything like that. But they did a really good job right away making us believe that like this might be a miracle, and the second coming, or the second Christ or whatever. So just want to throw that out there.
No, yeah. And I think that was the only part in the movie where I was slightly confused, is like how she actually got pregnant. Because we saw this scene, if you remember, like her kind of like almost hallucinating, possibly getting like drugged, and this weird scene with like hands all over her face. The room kind of goes dark, like she like something forcefully obviously happened to her, kind of. And we learn that kind of later in the film with how she actually did get pregnant, which is insane.
Yeah, very messed
but
up.
No, yeah, like I don't know. I love the setting of this, just covering first, second acts, things like that. The setting was great, learning some of the characters, and the envy that they get over her. And I mean, obviously, if I was like a monk or something and like something else happened to a dude, like a miracle, like, yeah, I'd probably be pretty envious, but, abstaining from sex and all that and to have a immaculate conception, it would be insane nowadays. But, yeah, like, what was your guys' reactions really to the first half? Well, we can kind of just cover the first half because a lot of things happen. We get introduced to people. Junes, I don't know if you want to cover cast quick, and just kind of roll through that.
Yeah, I can do that. I just want to say I can now not get the idea of you as a monk out of my head. I'm just envisioning Monk Schrader.
Shave my head.
Long beard. Yes, I will run through the cast. We've got a lot of Italian names here, so I am not going to butcher these bad boys. But the cast, we have our main character, Cecilia, played by Sydney Sweeney. We have Father Tedeschi, who is a very prominent antagonist in this film. We have Sister Gwen, Mother Superior. We have a Cardinal, Franco Marola, and we have Sister Mary. That is the main characters. There's also a Sister Isabella that shows up in the film, but that's our main cast. And what we have to start out, I think we see an initial scene with a young girl drowning at a frozen lake. That's a great way to start the film because we're wondering what is this going to lead to? What significance does this have? It all ends up being very important because this girl, who is Cecilia, survives this near-death instance and believes she's been saved by God to do great work in this world, to go spread the word of God. Those are really awesome opening scenes, and those are the types of things that we want to see in a movie that's really revolving around the idea of the Catholic faith and playing on those themes, infusing it with horror. The first half, I think, is paced quite well. I don't know about you guys. I think there's some good moments between, especially Cecilia and Father Tedeschi. Before that moment you talked about, Money, where she kind of has hallucinations, they have this dinner at the convent, and she's having a really good conversation with that father before she has the hallucinations. I think the suspense is built well. I think the whole time I'm on edge for the most part. While not, like I said earlier, blown out of my shoes or out of my socks, I'm still having a good time with it. And goddamn, the popcorn was good all the while.
Good point. Good points there. Yeah, Vetter, thoughts, just kind of that first half?
I think like right away though, you kind of see like what Sydney Sweeney is getting into with that opening thing at the beginning of the movie where the one nun tries to escape, and at that point we don't really know what's going on because it just started, but tries to escape, and she's almost out of, she almost gets through the fence, and they grab her leg, and instead of just killing her, they give her kind of a worse fate, which is being in a buried alive, right? Which is, I think, worse than just being dead, right?
With a broken leg. They break the leg too.
And all she has is a lighter to try to see what's going on. And I think just that opening act just kind of shows you like, okay, this is probably not going to go well for Sweeney. And it might be a bad thing, but yeah, then she gets there and, right away, just kind of that eerie feeling going back to kind of the atmosphere of that movie. I thought where they had this at, it was kind of one setting, but it was just a great spot for it. It just seemed kind of dark and for me, that's kind of the beginning of the whole movie. That kind of sets the stage for everything else as we get into later in the movie. And I think, Junes, like you said, you kind of hit it on the head with all that stuff. And so I really have nothing more to say other than that.
Yeah, the sadistic things they do and dark and evil things they do to some of these women and how ritualistic it ends up being is insane.
I actually do have one more thing, and this maybe ties into the back end too, so we can talk about maybe a little bit later. But I'm still a little confused on the characters that were like dressed in red.
okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Did she start seeing them after she found out she was pregnant? Because I think she did.
Well, God, they were in that.
I can't
scene.
remember.
They were. I was gonna say they were in that first scene. So
because I think they were a part of that scene, like I mentioned, where she has hands all over her face as I think she was forcefully like impregnated, kind of.
Yeah.
And then she started seeing them more and more. But if any, like you would think, like other people are going to see them. That's the thing. So I don't know if it was just a mental thing, or if if this was real. I think they were actually there. I think it's really ritualistic, like I said. So I think they were targeting her, and they were actually physically there, and depicting whenever she saw them as something as a negative thing is coming her way, something along those lines. And I think that's how she started kind of connecting the dots and ultimately trying to escape and things like that and trying to get out. So I think she read the room right with them. Because the one scene that I remember, and I freaking loved it, we saw it in the trailer, is she saw them in a window, two of them in the red masks or whatever, and you have that suicide that happens just right after. So it's almost like you see them in the movie and something negative follows.
Ooh.
Something horrible kind of follows. Yep. So it's like,
yes,
I guess that is a good point.
Nailed it, Money. That is common in horror movies. I think you're fucking. I'm gonna go back and watch it. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
I
think every time it kind of happens,
bad things to come. That's great.
So, I think it was a good first half. Like you said, just other underrated kind of part of it too. I think is we see a lot of it in the second half too, and she's like walking around at night, but just the shots we get of that actual place she's in, like the doors creaking, the giant wooden doors, like walking around at night. Some of the shots we got of the place was just so damn cool, I think. And they did such a great job with portraying her in this place with all the other nuns. Just something about a goddamn nun now is kind of eerie, like in a way, like after seeing this film. So I'm glad when a horror movie can really shape my mind on a subject I have a fixed opinion on a little bit and kind of view the way I see it. Maybe not obviously negatively, but just like, I never thought of it like that. But anyway, I'm glad to get into this second half. We can get into our table talk now. And for our table talk, we are going to have something kind of related to the movie here. And that is going to be, what is your favorite subgenre of Catholic horror? So like demonology, exorcisms, possessions, paranormal, supernatural, dark, gothic, rituals, anything that follows Catholic horror. So there's a wide spectrum. And you guys, for a minute or two, just kind of explain yours and why. I'm curious to see, Junes, I might know yours. Collin, obviously I'm not going to know yours, but if you want to give it a crack first, I'd love to hear what you got.
Yes, sir. This is a great idea. I love talking about these types of things. On our last episode, just having a casual conversation about the horror genre is one of the most exciting things for me, and I think for a lot of other people. So for mine, Money and Vetter, I'm going to go with occults, because there's so many high quality occult films in the horror genre. We've got Suspiria, The Wicker Man, Rosemary's Baby, The Witch, and The House of the Devil, which Vetter has seen. Yep. Many of these occult films play on our blind belief and hoping in something greater, believing in something that will protect us against all costs. Often the ending is bleak with these films, with the occult prevailing over the protagonists and over all that is holy. We in our real lives put faith in the Lord, and for good reason. Yet there is true evil, and occult films, while dramatized, do paint the picture of what it is like. All of this is very real in our past as human beings, and still probably is today. Maybe not as widespread or as common, but it's still prevalent in our society. For me, I also thought Gothic would be kind of a fun one. I looked at online Gothic horror movies, and one of them was Nosferatu, Frankenstein.
You love that.
That doesn't tie in necessarily to the religion quite as much. I love the Gothic tones in a horror film, so I'd probably go number 2 on that.
Nice. That's what you got for us.
This seems like such an easy way out, but I got to go with Supernatural. I mean, come on.
Right.
Think about all the movies that have came out that have shaped my feeling of horror movies, and that's Supernatural. Like you can't get much better than some of those. And for me, like my favorites are like the ones where like people move into like a house and it's like an old house and just that eerie feeling in it. And there's supernatural. There's ghosts and demons inside that house. Like those are like my favorite type of. Honestly, my favorite type of horror movies just in general. I just love those. And like I said, you can name off a bunch, and that's why it's like saying like that's like the easy way out, because it is an easy way out. I mean, Supernatural, I think for most people are going to say that, but I truly think those are my favorite. You guys already know me. I hate exorcisms. I think I've said that on the last episode. I'm just not a fan of them. I think they're too dark for me. I can handle it, but I just think it's just like, I don't know. I'd rather not.
Right.
I didn't even see the last exorcism that came out like a couple months ago. I didn't even see that one. So that one's
probably a good thing you didn't see that one.
Yeah.
No, you make good points, Vetter.
Yes.
But to actually go off of that, I am going to go with Exorcist films for myself.
Oh,
so
really?
Yeah,
I was just going to say, I wish I could talk to somebody that loved Exorcist films, and here we are with money. Oh my!
I actually kind of believe that though, because you have said in the past that actually you love exorcisms.
Now with the Exorcist Believer, like it coming out last year, I believe it was 2023. Like it obviously sucked, but you have the Exorcist from the 70s, and another recent freaking good one was the Pope's Exorcist. I love that movie. Something about them, because for me, my ultimate favorite genre is slasher, and with Exorcist films, I do believe in demonology, that sort of thing. You have priests or pope or these people going out to actually exorcise these demons out of real human beings. There's trials and cases. So something about the realism of it, you see it in a film, but like these things, Ed and Lorraine, Cody, like that's a real freaking thing, dude. And for them to be demonologists and exorcists, like that's pretty nuts. So to see it well executed in a movie is just, it hits different when you have a movie that actually portrays it well. A lot of action, and just good action overall. It's amazing. Obviously very debatable on my end to pick that, I know. And supernatural vets, like that really, there's a such fine line in the difference of having supernatural and exorcist.
Yeah, there is.
Like I think of, like I mentioned, Ed and Lorraine from The Conjuring, like demonologists exorcising these people, hundreds, probably thousands of cases, obviously, just of them doing this for their life, for a living, and just trying to do the right thing for these people. Such inspiration. I love like these types of films when they're portrayed right. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Exorcist films. So I'm gonna stand by that. I love them when they're good, obviously, but very hard to do though, especially from a rough or a harder critic standpoint. Pretty rough. So
they can fuck those movies up pretty easy, goddamn easy. But
they really can.
Hearing both sides of your points there, I can see why better you get turned away from it a little bit. It does get a bit too grotesque and disturbing at times. And Money, I love that you can indulge in it. I love it.
So to pick up where we left off with Immaculate, the second half, obviously insane, I think. Probably my favorite scene, and Vets, you called it, or maybe Tyler, but the escape scene. She learns at this point, like, shit's hitting the fan. Like, I am not safe here. She's really trying to get out, find a way out, and she actually fakes, like, what would you say, going into labor, obviously, like, or just having contractions, things like that.
Or
like
or something bad happened because she did the fake blood everywhere.
Yep. What guys, what were your thoughts briefly? Like, because for me, I just want to shed light to it. That whole sequence of events and trying to get out, because the events that follow after being in the car and her just trying to escape they get better. So I think that's kind of like the initial sequence where it's like, holy shit, like this is the ball's rolling now.
That was definitely my favorite scene of the movie was that scene. Because if you think about it, right before that scene was where she caught the people in the red, cutting off the tongue of the other nun. And she is just like, her facial expression is like, oh my gosh, like what did I get myself into? I am absolutely screwed here. So then that next scene is then when that happens. And that's where I turned over to Tyler. I'm like, this has to be her faking this. And it was a great scene. And it kind of reflected on kind of where we were at watching it. Like we were kind of in the same boat where it's like, this is turning really bad for her and she needs to get out of here as soon as possible.
Yeah.
We were having that realization, like you said, but with Cecilia at the same time that we make up in our heads, okay, this is fucked, get out of here. Cecilia has that same thought in her head. We saw earlier in the film, the convent has their own chickens that they prepare for food. And there's a scene where Cecilia's chopping off the heads of the chickens. Well, very smart of her. She uses these chickens and the blood from the chickens to make it look like she was having some type of emergency and she was just bleeding from everywhere and they had to bring her to the hospital. I love the moment too when the father is told by the mother superior that she was faking this shit, and he looks back at her in the car seat in the back of the seat and he looks at her and he kind of shakes his head. She takes off and sprints through the Italian countryside dressed in white, all bloody. Such a good moment, and it really sets up the rest of the second half beautifully.
Yeah, that was by far my favorite too, probably. And yeah, like so following that as well, so she does that, and then he basically like puts her in captivity at that point, doesn't he? Like she ends up, we kind of are getting to like the catacomb scene of, you know, because I think those are a real thing too in Rome or Italy, like the underground catacombs, and it stretches for hundreds, thousands of miles underneath the city. So to see that being followed up to, but you know, to shed light on something else before that, they explain actually how she got pregnant, which was, what was the object? I forget off the top of my head. Was it the nail from the statue of Jesus up on the cross? They explained something how it had fragments of bone fragments and like tissue or flesh and blood from it, utilizing that to basically impregnate her, I believe. And so she's, like I mentioned earlier, had all, you know, she's connecting the dots the whole time, you know, obviously wanting to get out, but and then learning how that happened and seeing these projects of babies in that scene, in that like exam or like science room, whatever you want to call it at this point, all the trials basically that they had on other women, because wasn't there another sister or woman that they kind of did it to that she ends up finding about. So seeing that, having like Father Tadashi played, you know, such an important role. He was phenomenal. I love his character in this film. Such a turn of events with his character, but he did a damn good job. And I don't know how, because I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this too. I know I'm kind of rambling, but how there's no way he should have survived, I think, after being locked in that room with the explosion going off. I think that would have been a perfect way to get him off, kill him off, have her escape. Nope, like has to come out. I don't like that. Yes, I just want to hear your thoughts.
That very cheesy moment. That's one thing that with like horror films, sometimes it's just like, okay, here we go. It's not a big deal, but it's like, there's no way you survive that. I'm sorry. Like you're locked in a room. It's completely on fire. Just
I know
what is it? The carbon dioxide alone would just, you're screwed. Like there's just no way.
The chemicals in the air from all of that stuff and getting blown up, and
even if you are still alive, like the energy that you would have, like no way you'd be able to chase down a girl and actually put up a fight against her. You know, it's just
I think I definitely agree with you on that, 100%.
God, the capsules in that laboratory, like you said, Money, so disturbing. These grotesque, distorted fetuses,
Aliens.
basically, is what we have. And it looks like aliens, man. It doesn't look human. It's inhuman. And he did reveal that he was, once upon a time, father did, that he was a geneticist and he was using that background all the while. He had been doing this for 20 years to no success. And we see all the failures in those capsules. And his final, what he thinks to be a success, is Cecilia. But was it truly?
Yeah, good point. Good point. I loved all the scenes following this up to this moment, because we do have that 5-minute scene of her down in the catacombs too, and there's a scene in particular where she ends up getting like to the she basically hits a dead end, I think, or something, and you can see her just trying to be so quiet, and she puts her light out, and the whole theater's complete pitch black, and then you hear father coming up, and he's like whispering Cecilia, Cecilia, and you see his light get brighter as he gets closer, and I was on the edge of my seat, because you're just wondering if he's going to catch her, obviously, or not. Before that, I just wanted to shed light to that. I love that scene. All the worthwhile to get to what we just talked about as well, but Cecilia ends up killing him. I think with that same nail, basically, because she snatched it earlier and kept it. She stabs him right through the neck with it, and he's dead. Face all burnt up. That was, that looked pretty damn gruesome too. And then she sees the light of day out a hole in the wall, escapes, basically has what you said, Vetter, earlier, is like that 3 or 4 minute scene. She basically gives birth, and he actually tried to start, the father actually was starting to cut her stomach too. I don't know if you remember that, with that little scalpel. To try to basically get it out right on the spot instead of having like a natural birth. So she gave birth, and I want to know your guys' thoughts, because it's so bittersweet. I wish we got to see the baby, but they blurred it in the background, out of focus, while in focus on Sydney Sweeney's character. Man, I wish we got to see the child.
I think you kind of saw it though. It looked definitely alien-like, and
it was
effed up.
It was all bloody. It was just out of focus. Like, you really, I feel like, couldn't picture it.
I think pretty much
it was the noises it made too. That's what you said, I think.
Yeah, it was the noises. It was, I think as viewers, yes, we wanted to see, but I think they at least did a good job of knowing, like the way she was like looking at it, like she knew like full well, like this baby is fucked up, and the best thing it needs to happen is for it just to be dead.
June's thoughts just on that final freaking scene that we had. Man, like, what I want to know what was going through your head. I looked over at you. Your jaw was wide open.
That's literally
for like a solid minute or two, I think.
He almost choked on his popcorn.
I literally, Sydney Sweeney, I love you. You did an amazing job in this scene. She really showed that she's got the chops for any kind of genre of film. We just saw her in a freaking rom-com. She can do it all clearly, and she's just really in the early stages of her career. I hope to see her in more films. I mean, my God, we have a close-up shot, like you guys said, of her for 2 to 3 minutes, and she's spitting, she's bloody, she's yelling, she's screaming, and all of it is so goddamn believable. It took my breath away a little bit, and like you said, my jaw was freaking on the floor. And we get Vetter, like you said, a little bit of a snippet in the background after she's done screaming of that baby, and that baby did not look quite right. That baby was fucked.
No,
so
not at all. Kind of like
the Descent, Money, when we come down with the Rock. We're putting this thing out of its misery. We're putting this person out of its misery. We don't see the Rock come down, but we know the brutality of it.
Yeah. My only thing is I don't care how they would have done it. I wish we either saw the child or had like a 5 or 10 minute scene following the death of the child is all. I'd rather have either or. But I think they still did a good job with how they ended it. All right. And now we have Rotten Tomatoes we're going to see raw reactions here of basically what they gave it and how it's going to be based kind of around our scores. So they have an audience score of 60%, right at 60, and they have a critic score of 70. So, kind of surprised. I feel like you don't see that with these types of films, to have a critic score higher than an audience, especially in like a religious movie. Very interesting.
Critic score does not surprise me because I do think Hollywood is all on board with Sydney Sweeney and they want her to continue to do well. And so that doesn't surprise me.
No,
that's a good reason.
That's a damn good point. Yeah.
Yep.
So
I thought the audience score is just a little low. I'm sure you guys have already talked about it. Just Sydney Sweeney playing kind of the lead role of a nun, to me, that if you know Sydney Sweeney and you know the type of movies that she's in, that's really not her, her character or her role. And I thought she did a really, really good job playing that character. That was my first pro. And then I would say something that I kind of thought of, which was like, kind of surprising, was I actually liked how much kind of gore there was in the movie. Like, it was pretty gory, like, especially towards the end where, she's kind of going on a little bit of a killing spree, as well as the scene where, she fakes her miscarriage and everything like that. So, I like that, especially for a horror film. And then the other pro, just again, kind of the ending was a bit of a shock where, like I mentioned, she, as a nun goes on a killing spree, and she kills those couple of people, the priest, the what is he, a pope or something?
Cardinal, I think maybe.
Okay, yeah, cardinal, and then obviously she kills her own like child at the end, and which was kind of crazy. I thought the ending was pretty shocking, and I liked how it kind of built up to that. I think, for me, one of the cons that I had was at times, and like every movie, there's going to be parts where it's a bit slower, trying to maybe provide some backstory or trying to, set up for a good ending. So I thought maybe towards the beginning or middle, there was a few parts where it was a little bit slow for me. I like to be kind of on edge and scared and like have those jump scares. And sometimes I felt like it lacked that a little bit. I know when she was kind of confessing her sin, she was kind of grabbed, by the face or whatever, which was like the only jump scare that I could remember. And I think when I joined, you guys were just talking about it. Just the ending in general. For me, and I agree with Collin, when the movie was over with, he kind of mentioned how like, man, like 10 more minutes of that movie would have been great, where, maybe it explains, or first of all, maybe if it shows the kid, I don't know. For me, I kind of wanted to see what it looked like. But maybe that's the point of it, kind of leaves it up for interpretation. So overall, I actually was pleasantly surprised with this movie. I think we all left there kind of like, feeling really good about how things were. We didn't have a ton of like expectations, or at least I didn't going into it. And I thought it overperformed for me. So I'm going to go 7.2.
Nice. No, I loved all those points you talked about. 7.2 is a fair score by far. So I'm curious to see how we all turn out here. Junes, would you like to go next?
Yes, sir. Money, I would love to go. Tyler, it's great having you on here. But as I said in the beginning of the episode, I liked the idea of recreating the story of the Virgin Mary and twisting it into a horror movie with its own unique story. I thought that was really cool. And what's so haunting for me is the revelation for Cecilia that this child could either save the world or destroy her own world and the lives of others. I think that has so much weight to it, and it really does have lasting effect, and is the reason I think a lot of people will hold this in high regard at the end of the year for the genre. And while the characters and the setting and all the other technicalities were on point, I do think we had a little bit of a deficiency of memorable characters and memorable scares that really add to my rating for a horror film. That's really what's holding it back more than anything. I loved the ending. That's really the best part for me. Obviously, the miscarriage scene was really good as well. I agree with Tyler on the first half being a little bit slow. Yes, the pacing was technically accurate and how it should be. It built up the back half well, but it was a bit slow at times. And with all of that being said, I'm going a little bit below you here, Ty Show. I'm going a 6.9. I'm not going to give it that 7. I looked at some of the other films I've looked over.
Nice.
I don't think it's quite as good as that, but a 6.9 is goddamn respectable. And like I said, a lot of people are going to hold this in high regard at the end of the year.
Yeah. This film, the whole idea behind this film for me and the rating I'll give is the plot. I love the plot. I just think of having a modern day horror movie express that, especially in like a Catholic horror kind of genre, is pretty insane. Had mixed opinions on the cast, but overall it overperformed, like I mentioned in the beginning. So I loved the scenes we got, the intensity. Like you said, not as scary, Tyler, and Collin mentioned it earlier, not as scary, but the gore definitely made up for it. There's tons of scenes in this film where there's a tongue getting cut off, someone stabbed in the neck, a suicide, face beaten in, the harsh, the severity of these nuns that and the punishments that they give for being out of line is pretty damn fucking scary, I would say. So like it's there's a amount of intensity that you feel just sitting there watching it. And my God, my movie theater experience was good. So really, to keep it short and sweet and simple, like my initial score is a 7.1. I'm going a 7.4. I'm not stretching over the 7.5 hump, but this is definitely a film I would love to watch again. That's if you want to go. Let's hear it.
I'll very short, because obviously we've been talking now, and I think a lot of people listening probably have already kind of painted the picture of what my thoughts are. I just think, the movie Immaculate, it works. I think, like all good horror movies, the atmosphere of something wicked is coming your way is kind of shown throughout the movie. And I think it was achieved in pretty much these three things. The strong presence of Sydney Sweeney in this movie. Tyler, you touched on it. We've all touched on it, how good of a job she did. And like I said at the beginning of this show, I was a little worried that I was going to be a little overhyped, overrated because of her. I just didn't know if she would be able to fit in well with being a nun. I think she did a great job. I think the beautiful but authentic Italian setting of this movie, I mean, it was shot in Italy. And then I think the very good cast of the Latin actors. A lot of them were actually from Italy and were Latin. And I think it creates an atmosphere of foreign isolation for Sydney Sweeney. And I think it just creates kind of that terror in all of us for her. So I think the movie, it was a good movie. Going back to kind of what I said earlier about the whole 20% thing, of 20% of horror films in a given year are good, decent films. And I think this fits right in with that. It's a good, decent film. Definitely be able to watch it again. It wasn't the best thing I've ever seen, but it wasn't the worst either. And with that being said, and I'm not, or Money, I actually have the same rating as you, 7.4. I had 7.1 after the film, but I did move it up. As I thought about it more, and it's at 7.4.
I think it deserves it after really thinking about it. It's just one of those films. Like it was just good. I definitely, I'm glad I boosted it, because looking back at this down the road, I'm going to be glad I made that decision. I think truly. So, guys, thank you for joining. It's always been a pleasure. I'm so glad again we got together for this film. Make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, the TikToks we make. On all the main social media platforms to watch us and listen to us. As always, we've been scratching the surface. Thanks, fellas.